Welcome to Gary Talks. It's not a statement that would shock anyone when I say that Martin Scorsese is one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. If you look at his list of films, it's just banger after banger after banger, so many great ones. So when I decided I wanted to rank my top 10 favorite Scorsese movies, it was extremely hard, but I think I was able to pick out my 10 favorites. Growing up, I wasn't exactly a Scorsese fan because I didn't see a lot of his movies. They were all rated R, so, I watched Spielberg movies or Richard Donner movies or things like that. When we got HBO, I saw After Hours as the first Scorsese movie, and of course, that's the one most different from everything else he's done. It wasn't until Goodfellas came on HBO that I was like, man, this guy's really cool, I dig this movie. When I was in college, I was a film and communications major, but I had a minor in theology. So I took a class called Theology in Film, where we looked at directors and how their religion shaped the narrative. Scorsese, of course, was featured a ton, as many of his movies deal with his thoughts about his Catholicism and his relationship with Jesus. So it was really in that class that I fell in love with Scorsese's films, and he's been one of my favorites ever since. So let's jump into my 10 favorite Scorsese movies of all time, with number 10, Mean Streets. Mean Streets is Scorsese's first real expression of his voice, a kinetic plunge into the street-level Catholic guilt and machismo of 1970s Little Italy. Harvey Keitel plays Charlie, a small-town hood, torn between loyalty to his unstable friend Johnny Boy, played by Robert De Niro, and his need to rise within the mob hierarchy. The camera moves like it's part of the neighborhood, loose, aggressive, and curious. The film brims with youthful energy powered by a groundbreaking use of pop music and raw performances. It's about honor, violence, and the codes men live and die by. You can feel Scorsese working out his themes in real time: sin, consequence, masculinity, and the search for redemption. Everything that would define his later work is here, just waiting to erupt. Next up at number 9, the most controversial film I can remember growing up. Now people are offended at everything, people boycott movies all the time. It wasn't something that happened a ton back when I was growing up, but this one. The boycotts for this movie were huge, and you just couldn't really find it anywhere to see it. When I was in that theology and film class, I asked my professor, who was a Jesuit priest, if we could watch this film, and he said, "Not on your life, I'm not showing this one in class." So finally, later, I was able to track it down, and I loved it. Coming in at number 9, The Last Temptation of Christ. The Last Temptation of Christ is a deeply personal, fiercely spiritual work from a director unafraid to wrestle with the divine. Willem Dafoe plays Jesus not as an icon, but as a man torn between destiny and desire, between the weight of salvation and the longing for an ordinary life. The film was and remains controversial, not because it blasphemes, but because it dares to humanize the divine and ask what faith really costs. Scorsese uses symbolism, music, and stark imagery to explore themes of sacrifice, fear, and purpose. It's less concerned with biblical literalism than with inner torment and philosophical struggle. The final act, where Jesus imagines an alternate life away from the cross, is as moving and provocative as anything Scorsese has ever filmed. It's a meditative, beautiful film about doubt, choice, and surrender. Next up at number 8, Cape Fear. Cape Fear is Scorsese's take on the psychological thriller, soaked in Southern Gothic menace and elevated by its intensity. Robert De Niro transforms into Max Cady, a sadistic ex-con who targets the family of his former lawyer, played by Nick Nolte. It's a performance of terrifying physicality and coiled intellect, full of fury and sexual threat. Juliette Lewis is outstanding as the daughter caught in Cady's web, especially in their infamous school auditorium scene. The film is stylized and bold, and Scorsese treats the material like a morality play. Justice, guilt, and retribution swirl together until right and wrong become hard to parse. It's a pulpy premise rendered with cinematic grandeur, reminding you how thin the veneer of security really is. You'll notice De Niro is in a ton of these movies. He was in Mean Streets, he was in Cape Fear, and he's in my next favorite Scorsese movie, The King of Comedy. One of Scorsese's most underrated triumphs, The King of Comedy is a razor-sharp satire on fame, delusion, and the blurred line between obsession and ambition. Robert De Niro's Rupert Pupkin is desperate, awkward, and completely disconnected from reality, convinced he deserves to be a star despite having zero talent or self-awareness. His pursuit of talk show host Jerry Langford, played perfectly by Jerry Lewis, becomes both pathetic and terrifying. The film is deeply uncomfortable, intentionally so, to feel the secondhand embarrassment and underlying menace in Pupkin's determination. Scorsese strips away the glamour of show business, replacing it with cardboard cutouts, empty green rooms, and audience applause that echoes like a lie. It's bleakly hilarious and a spiritual ancestor to Joker, though even more biting in its quiet derangement. Coming in at number 6, another one with De Niro, and with Joe Pesci, and Sharon Stone, James Woods, just a great, classic gangster Scorsese film, Casino. Casino is a symphony of greed, betrayal, and opulence, chronicling the rise and fall of Las Vegas through the eyes of Sam Ace Rothstein. De Niro plays Ace with quiet obsession, while Joe Pesci brings volatility and menace as Nicky Santoro, a walking powder keg of violence. Sharon Stone delivers a career-best performance as Ginger, spiraling through addiction, heartbreak, and manipulation in a world that chews everyone up eventually. The voiceover-driven structure mirrors Goodfellas, but the tone is colder, more operatic. Scorsese lingers on detail, how casinos are run, how bets are fixed, how power erodes. It's not about Vegas, it's about what Vegas brings out in people when the stakes are too high. Next up at number 5 is a film I already mentioned. It was the first Scorsese movie I ever saw, and it's one I think a lot of you haven't seen, and it's just really strange. You don't think of Scorsese and dark comedy together, but he made a perfect one, After Hours. After Hours is a dark, surreal comedy of anxiety, an odyssey through a night that spirals further out of control with every turn. Griffin Dunne plays Paul, a lonely word processor who ventures into downtown Manhattan for a date and winds up trapped in a nightmare fueled by paranoia, coincidence, and absurdity. The film plays like a panic attack you can't wake up from, shifting tone from comedic to unsettling on a dime. Scorsese directs with a kinetic sense of claustrophobia, using camera moves, shadows, and silence to create a city that feels both alive and indifferent. It's a departure from his usual fare, but still distinctly his, filled with guilt, Catholic overtones, and characters searching for meaning in chaos. It's a cult gem that captures the existential dread of being out of place and unable to get home. The top 4 Scorsese movies are all certified classics. I mean, they're Oscar winners, they're known the world over, they're really, really close to each other, but I had to put this one at number 4, Raging Bull. A raw, bruising exploration of self-destruction and redemption, Raging Bull tells the story of Jake LaMotta, a middleweight boxer whose greatest opponent is himself. Robert De Niro's performance is transformative, both physically and emotionally. He doesn't just play LaMotta, he absorbs him, exposing every scar, every flaw, every insecurity. It's one of the most fearless performances ever put on film. Scorsese directs the fight scenes like spiritual warfare, turning the ring into a brutal, beautiful cathedral. Outside the ring, the violence continues toward his brother, his wife, and eventually his own dignity. The film is less about boxing than it is about rage and the impossibility of true control. It's artful, painful, and transcendent, capturing both the glory and the ruin of a man at war with himself. Next up at number 3, just a flawless film, another one with De Niro, Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver is a descent into urban isolation and madness, framed through the windshield of a city that never sleeps, but has nothing to say. Robert De Niro's Travis Bickle is a Vietnam vet turned night cabbie, a man whose alienation curdles into rage. His monologues are internal cries for help, dressed as righteous fury. Scorsese doesn't just show New York, he indicts it. The city becomes a pressure cooker for Travis's fantasies of cleansing violence. The film walks a razor's edge between psychological portrait and cultural critique, never offering neat answers. It's violent, hypnotic, and deeply unsettling, and it helped define not only Scorsese's voice, but the disillusioned tone of an entire decade of American cinema. Coming in at number 2 is a Scorsese film that I know a lot of you think is overrated. You hate that he won the Oscar for this one, but I love it. I think it's a great cop movie, I think it's a great gangster movie, and I think it's filled with some of the best performances in any Scorsese film. The Departed. A pressure cooker thriller where loyalty, identity, and fate clash in every frame, The Departed is set in Boston's murky underworld, where It pits an undercover cop against a mole in the police force, both living lives built on lies. Leonardo DiCaprio gives one of his most anguished performances, constantly teetering on emotional collapse, while Matt Damon's charm masks cold calculation. Jack Nicholson brings fire and chaos as crime boss Frank Costello, delivering monologues that walk the line between genius and madness. Scorsese layers the cat-and-mouse tension with operatic force, turning every double-cross into a gut punch. It's a brutal, fast-talking, bullet-riddled morality tale where no one escapes clean, and it pulses with the kind of restless energy only Scorsese can sustain. Next up at number 1 is a movie that won't shock any of you that it's here. I already mentioned it once in the show. This was the movie that when I saw it, made me fall in love with Scorsese as a director. I know a lot of you think The Godfather is the greatest gangster film of all time, or The Godfather 2 is the greatest gangster film of all time, but to me, this is the greatest gangster film of all time, and Martin Scorsese's best, Goodfellas. This film is Martin Scorsese at the height of his powers. Goodfellas is stylish, electric, and mercilessly insightful. The film chronicles the rise and fall of mobster Henry Hill with a pace that never lets up, powered by voiceover, whip pans, and a soundtrack that functions like its own narrator. What makes Goodfellas transcend the gangster genre is its honesty. It doesn't glamorize the life, it seduces you, but then turns on you. The allure of fast money, power, and respect gives way to paranoia, betrayal, and rot. Scorsese makes the viewer complicit in both the highs and the lows. It's not just his best film, it's one of the most vital American films ever made. And that's it for this week. Next week, I'm going to look at my top 10 favorite albums from the 2010s. See you then.
From capes to tapes, Gary's on the case. He's breaking down each scene, every place. On Gary Talks, he's quick with his peculiar wit. From plot twists to the comic strips, Gary's flipping sick.